Hello and welcome to day 4 or video 4 of the 12 days videos of Christmas, 12 mindful Christmas days. And hopefully some of you will have seen yesterday's video with Victoria talking about gratitude. And today's theme is very similar or very connected to gratitude, certainly. And that is generosity. And to be generous is a willingness to give, whether that be money, help, kindness. But it's a willingness to give in a bountiful way, in a way that is more than usual, more than expected, to go that extra mile, to just go that bit further for someone else. So it's not giving for the sake of giving. And when we're generous, we're not doing it for anything in return. We're not doing it because we expect the gift back. We're just doing it because we want to do it. And that's what generosity is. It's the act of being kind and selfless, giving to others. And although it is selfless, although it is to the benefit of others and helps others with their well-being, when we receive kindness and generosity from others, we feel better. So they feel better when they receive kindness and generosity from us. But we also feel better when we give it. Being generous actually increases our sense of well-being. It's a really effective way of improving our health and well-being, in particular our mental health. And it's a good thing for our mental health, especially when we give to people. It's more likely they're going to give to us, not because there's an obligation, not because there's an expectation. As I say, when we're generous, there's no expectation, but because they want to. So what happens in here, in our brains, neuroscientists have seen that areas of the brain light up when we're being generous, when we're giving. And the areas that light up are the areas that are associated with pleasure, associated with social connection, and associated with trust. So when we are generous, it makes us feel more connected to others. It makes us feel more trusting of others. And it makes us feel good. It's a really effective way of improving our mental health and our state of well-being. And it can be a really small thing. This is a time of year where people give gifts, and sometimes people give more than they can afford. And sometimes people go above and beyond. And that's lovely. But generosity isn't about spending a lot of money on someone. Generosity isn't about potentially making yourself broke because you've spent too much on people. But it is about giving. But it's not just about giving gifts. It's not just about giving money. It can be about giving time. It can be about giving feedback. Telling somebody that they really loved that Twitter post, that YouTube video, that Facebook message, that Instagram picture, whatever it might be. Just giving positive feedback is generous, because most people don't. Most people say things on social media, and if they like it, they like it. They might click like, but people don't generally make the effort of actually leaving a comment, saying how it touched them. And that's an act of generosity. It's an act of generosity to smile, to pay attention to someone, to listen to them. If they're struggling, if they want to talk, to actually listen, to pay attention is a fantastic way of being generous. And I mentioned gratitude earlier, and the connection with gratitude is we feel grateful when we receive kindness and generosity from others. And if we're in tune with gratitude, if we practice gratitude, we realize that that's what that feels like. We're aware of what that feels like, so we're more likely to be generous because we know how the gratitude that people will feel for them. And we are naturally positive. We're naturally kind as a species. It's built into our DNA. We often lose sight of that kindness. We have fear of not having enough, so we don't give. We have distrust issues. We have doubts and uncertainties. But our intrinsic state of being is to be kind. So cultivating that kindness, enabling us to be more generous, can actually help us be a lot happier. And I mentioned how other people are more likely to be generous with us if we're generous with them. But not only that, when people witness generosity, when people see people being kind to others, when people see people donating, when people see people helping, when people see people volunteering, they're more likely to do it too. So generosity has a ripple effect. It doesn't only affect the person who you're being generous with, it doesn't only help you, but it also, anybody who's aware of it, it can affect them. So we're going to do a practice now. And the practice is a memories of kindness practice, or memories of generosity practice. And there's 3 stages. And in the first stage, I want you to try and recall a time when someone was generous to you in the last few days. It might have been a gift you received. It might have been some help. It might have been a note from a colleague telling you how much they appreciate you. It might have just been a thank you. A time when someone was generous to you, when somebody did something for you that was more than you expected, that was more than usual. And then in the second stage, I want you to try and recall a time when you were kind, when you were generous. And then in the third stage, to open up and try and recall a time where you've witnessed kindness, where you've witnessed the kindness of people to others. Now recall the beginning of the first lockdown. We all used to, once a week, stand at our doorsteps and clap for the NHS, for their generosity. But it was also an act of generosity from us by saying thank you. And there are loads of examples throughout this pandemic of people being kind, of people raising money through walks and runs and various other activities and stuff, virtual walking, virtual gaming, virtual running, virtual marathons, all to raise money for those less well off. There are loads of examples of that kindness and generosity. So hopefully you'll be able to see and remember one that you've maybe heard on the news or heard about from a friend or seen or witnessed. So starting by finding a comfortable, relaxed meditation position with your hands gently resting in your lap, your feet flat on the floor if that's comfortable for you. Back fairly upright but not too rigid. And gently allowing the eyes to close if you wish. If not, seeing if you can just allow the focus to soften slightly. And setting up an intention for this practice to cultivate an awareness of what kindness feels like, what it feels like in the body, what generosity feels like. Intention to embody generosity. And starting by turning your attention to the breath. Just noticing what it feels like to breathe. What it feels like to breathe in. What it feels like to breathe out. Without straining or forcing, just gently allowing the breath to deepen slightly. Trying to keep the in-breath and out-breath of equal length. You may find it useful to count to 3 or 4 on the in-breath and the same on the out-breath. So right now we're just doing 2 things. We're noticing the felt sensations of each breath, and we're gently regulating and equalizing the breath with the help of counting. If you notice that your mind begins to wander, that's perfectly okay. There's nothing wrong. It's perfectly natural. I'd expect it to happen. It's what our minds do. There's nothing wrong. We're not trying to stop our thoughts. We're not trying to push them away or block them. We're just choosing not to get involved. There's no need to engage in thinking. We can just acknowledge them, let them be, and then gently bring our attention back to the breath, back to the counting each time. Now letting go of the counting, just allowing the breath to return to its usual rhythm. Just taking a moment to check in with what it feels like to be sitting here right now. Just noticing the contact with the chair and the floor, the gentle pull of gravity. And maybe allowing a sense of being held and supported unconditionally by the chair and the ground beneath you. You have any sense of holding. And then bring to mind a time when someone was kind and generous to you recently. Where you were the recipient of an act of generosity. Maybe someone gave you a gift. Maybe someone helped you. Maybe someone listened to you. Just trying to recall a time where someone helped, gave you something you weren't expecting, that was more than what you would normally expect from that person. It may just be a simple act of generosity, a note from a colleague saying how much they appreciate your work for the year. And thank you. A compliment. And see if you can recall this act of generosity in as much detail as possible. Maybe recalling what you were wearing, who else was there, time of the day, where you were. How warm or cold the room was. Just bring as much detail to this memory as you can. Let's see if you can recall what it felt like at the time to receive this act of generosity, to receive this gift, this help, this kindness. And as you recall this act of generosity, how does it feel now? Just noticing any sensations in the body, any emotions, any feelings. Then letting go of that memory. And bring to mind a time when you were generous, a time when you went that extra mile for someone, gave that extra bit. Made that extra bit of effort because you wanted to, because you wanted to help this person in some way. And again, seeing if you can recall in as much detail as possible what you were doing at the time, where you were. Noticing how it felt. What did it feel when you were being generous to somebody? And as you recall this act of generosity, notice how it feels now. As you remember being kind to someone, and as you remember helping someone in their time of need, when you gave, not expecting anything back in return, just because you wanted to help. What does that feel like? What does generosity feel like when you give? When you're the giver? Now letting go of that memory, and seeing if you can bring to mind a time where you've witnessed kindness, where you've observed generosity. Maybe something you've seen personally, maybe something you've heard about, maybe something you've read, something you've seen on TV, news. And seeing if you can bring this act of generosity into mind, just recalling the story, either recalling what you witnessed, or what you read, what you saw, what you heard. Noticing how this feels. How does it feel to witness generosity? To live in a world where people are generous and kind? And letting go of that memory and just noticing any felt sensations in the body as a result, as a consequence of this practice. And trying to just embody any sensations, what generosity feels like. Maybe setting an intention to take that with us too. Maybe setting an intention to be generous, to be kind to ourselves and to others as we bring this practice to a close. Thank you very much, and thank you for listening or watching and watching. And if you do leave a comment, any feedback, that would be extremely generous and kind of you. So thank you in advance if you do. If you don't, it's okay. As I say, I don't expect it. Therefore, anyone who does, it's an act of generosity. So thank you. So take care. Hope you've had as good a Christmas as you could have under the circumstances of this year at this moment. And yeah, hope to see you all again soon. So thank you. Bye now.